Curran bowls to Ravindra. He's bowled him. Yorker length delivery. It's all over. England have won the match, and they've taken the series by 3 matches to 1. And England have come back from that heavy defeat in Cardiff last Friday to win the series comprehensively. 3 thrashings. Well, one-day series comes to an end and another one gets underway, albeit with very different teams on both sides. England against Ireland, well, in theory at Headingley today, but the covers are on. It's a 12:30 start in theory, but clearly we are not going to start on time. There's a lot of rain overnight and the ground is pretty wet, so I don't know, it might be touch and go whether we get some play today. We have to be underway by 5:32 for 20 overs a side. Suggestion is that the weather will be better this afternoon. It's not raining heavily here at Headingley, but it's filled in. It's a grey canvas over the top of this ground. If only we had a sort of canvas over the top of the ground. And you know, we have cricket in this country, time for perhaps an indoor stadium somewhere. Anyway, we don't have that, and so I don't know, we'll see whether we get any cricket today. England against Ireland, there's all sorts of things going on with the England team at the moment, who's playing and who's not. I pick up the programme for this match, England's men against Ireland's men, and there's Harry Brook on the front cover. Well, things change very quickly. Joe Root, obviously, in for Harry Brook for this match only, although if we don't get any play today, who knows, Joe Root might play in the second match on Saturday against Ireland at Trent Bridge. Jason Roy was asked if he wanted to play in this series. We were told he's not going to play today. England have picked their World Cup squad, but there are still travelling reserves to select. So there is, you know, some competition. There is some meaning in this series against Ireland, and of course for Ireland as well, it's a great opportunity to come up against a decent England second string side. Although you look down the list of the players in the squad. The likes of Jack Crawley captaining the side for the first time, Ben Duckett, who played in the Ashes, no Harry Brook, but Sam Hain and Jamie Smith, who's a rising talent, Phil Salt, who we've seen in England white ball colours, and Will Jacks as well. So, and Rayan Ahmed. I mean, there's a lot of talent in this England squad. Jimmy Anderson is alongside me, and Michael McNamee as well. Good afternoon to both of you. Well, what do you make of the sort of situation around England's squad for the World Cup, Jimmy? I mean, first up, no Jason Roy. We thought they were going to pick the squad or announce the squad in the middle of the week. In the end, they picked it on Sunday. No Jason Roy and Harry Brook in. How did that sit with you?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everyone. I think it's obviously a difficult decision for the selectors, but I don't know. I mean, they've gone with what they feel is their best sort of squad, their strongest squad, and Harry Brook is in that, and Jason Roy isn't. Obviously, Jason Roy didn't take part in that one-day series against New Zealand because of injury, but was looking like he was getting back fit. But I feel like they want that. It was the feeling that they want the cover for the 1 to 6 rather than Jason Roy just being able to cover the top 2. Yeah. Harry Brook's a little bit more versatile and can cover a few more positions. So I'm guessing that's the flexibility they wanted in that squad. It feels really tough on Jason Roy, but these decisions sometimes can be very tough, and obviously he'll be hugely disappointed. I'm not surprised that he's turned down the opportunity to play in this game today. Imagining what the sort of frame of mind he'd be in after that sort of decision. It's understandable, but
he might not be fit. That's the other thing as well.
Yeah.
We don't know how match fit he is.
Yeah, there is that, and I guess there's two ways of looking at it. Actually, if he did play in these 3 games, would that actually then and did well? Would that actually sort of if the selectors are looking for a travelling reserve or a reserve of some description, would he be in that if he did well in this series? So there's 2 ways of looking at it, but I do feel for him because it feels tough having been named in that initial 15 and then not.
Yeah, top-level international sport is a ruthless business, isn't it? Well, it can be. What about Joe Root's decision to play in this match? Well, he might not get the opportunity today. What does that say, you think, about his sort of state of mind or form or whatever?
Yeah, well, he's out of form, clearly. He doesn't feel like his rhythm's there. He struggled throughout the New Zealand series. I think he got double figures once out of four knocks. So that tells me that he wants to, he's someone that loves to get into that rhythm. He wants to bat. He wants to spend time in the middle. And if that rhythm's not there, he doesn't want to go to India, to a World Cup, and not be in the sort of form that he wants to be in. And, I don't think it's I think it's a really good decision from him. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do see him at Trent Bridge if we don't get any play here today, because he's that sort of person who wants, as I said, he wants that time out in the middle to get that rhythm.
Yeah, because some players would just walk away, wouldn't they, and say, actually, I'm not in great form, but I'll get away from the game for a week or so before we fly out. I'm good enough. I know, I trust my own game. I can get to India. I've played well there before. I'm good against spin. It will work for me. Yeah,
I think it's about knowing your own game. So I feel like someone like a Ben Stokes, if he was in a similar situation, he would say, right, I'm done now. I need a week off before we fly to India, and then I'll just pick it up when we get to India and sort it out. And whereas Joe Root's slightly different as a player, he wants that game time. He wants to feel that he's in form, and that's why he goes through these amazing runs of getting big scores after big scores. If he's in form, he'll go on for a long period of time getting those runs and being consistent doing that. So he wants to find that consistency, and especially, as I said before, a World Cup, he'll want to feel in as good a shape as he possibly can.
We'll look at the England squad for this series in a bit more detail in just a moment. But Michael McNamee is with us as well from BBC Northern Ireland. He was with us for the Test match earlier this year.
I pop up the oldest of times, Simon. Good afternoon, Simon, Jimmy, and everyone. Lovely to be here.
It's nice to see you. I came in through the gate this morning. You were already discussing Irish politics down there.
I think it was more golf, to be honest with you. The man on the security gate.
I missed that bit.
He'd been to the Open Championship at Royal Portrush, so he was discussing. Funnily enough, he was discussing the fact that the final day of the Open was lashing with rain as well. So you've set up Irish weather very kindly here in Yorkshire for me. Hugely disappointing, but it is. I mean, looking at that leaden grey sky, it's like a June day at Malahide or Clontarf.
Yeah, we've had a few days like this, I tell you, at Malahide.
Goodness knows, we have indeed. We've had a few washouts in Malahide, but this is an opportunity for Ireland. I mean, it's 3.5, nearly 4 months since that Test match. Hugely disappointing, a thrashing, you have to say, at Lord's at the start of June. And the idea was that Ireland were concentrating on the white ball game. There would be a successful qualifying tournament for the 50 over World Cup. There would be a successful qualifying tournament for the T20 World Cup. It didn't quite work out. They did qualify for the T20, but the campaign in Zimbabwe was hugely disappointing. They didn't even reach the Super Sixes. Defeats to Oman, Sri Lanka, and I think most disappointingly to Scotland.
By 1 wicket.
They got into a winning position and threw it away, and there's always been an edge. There's always been a huge rivalry between the Irish and the Scots, but a wonderful performance by Michael Leask with a not-out knock of 90 odd to win the match. So that was hugely disappointing, but not even to make the Super Sixes. So off the back of that, we lost our white ball captain. Andrew Balbirnie stood down. Paul Stirling, also hugely experienced, is in as sort of interim white ball captain. And the team doesn't change, the squad doesn't change very much. It's still a case of looking for Irish qualified players. We found this New Zealand born spinner, Theo van Voorkom, and he's in the squad for this series. And there we have the pronunciation popping up on the screen. 30 years old. He's had a successful domestic campaign with the Northern Knights back in Northern Ireland, but an unknown quantity, you could say, on the international stage. So Ireland are looking at these 3 matches. They obviously finished and won the dead rubber game 3 years ago in Southampton with a wonderful partnership between Balbirnie and Stirling, and they'll be looking for, you've got to be optimistic, looking for a series win, or at least one win. But it's looking in terms of 50 overs towards the next World Cup and building for that. But this should have been a World Cup warm-up series, shouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's a World Cup warm-up series now with an awful lot of players who aren't going to the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that none of them go. Well, Joe Root will go, but very few others, one or two travelling reserves for England. It's worth noting, actually, that the last 2 occasions that Ireland have played England in white ball cricket, one-day international and T20, they beat them. They're the only team to beat them, and a remarkable win in the last T20 World Cup. What do you think the feeling is in the Irish camp about the fact that it's not England's World Cup squad, and there's an obvious reason for that, isn't there? That England have just come off the back of the New Zealand series. They're going to India pretty soon. Some of the players actually would just like a break for a week. Whereas I think that one of the issues was when they've planned this series, they thought the World Cup was going to be a little bit later, perhaps a week later. We were all told initially a World Cup final 25th of November. Now it's the 19th of November, or thereabouts anyway, something like that. So it would have sort of dovetailed nicely, but now it doesn't really fit. What about the fact that Ireland are playing against this England team rather than the World Cup team?
I suspect for the players, I don't think it's a big deal, because for a second string, in inverted commas, it's a blooming good second string England team. So Ireland will play England, who, regardless of who they put up, maybe for the spectators it's more of a big deal, but you can understand the logistics and the reasoning behind it. So it won't say should Ireland pull off a wonderful victory today or at Nottingham or at Bristol. It won't say in the record books brackets most of the World Cup squad weren't there. It'll say Ireland beat England. So that's the main thing. And let's face it, there are lots of players in this English squad with a point to prove. And you look back, and there are a few English players who've won their only caps against Ireland down through the sort of last decade. So the players maybe making their debuts in this series will not want to be those one or two cap wonders.
No.
They'll want this to be the start of their England careers.
Someone who started against Ireland actually then didn't play for 2 years, who's sort of fundamental to England's World Cup squad now, is David Milan. He's made his debut in Ireland in that match that England won. It was actually quite a tight game, wasn't it? And England winning by about 4 wickets, something like that, chasing around 200 before the World Cup, and they sent a sort of under strength, a sort of A/B team, and it was a decent game of cricket. The players to look out for in this Ireland team. We saw.
We've Curtis Camphor moving up to 3.
Yeah.
You think back, he was the big discovery from that 2020 series in Southampton, a sort of almost accidental uncovering by Niall O'Brien of Camphor's links. I don't think he played in Ireland before he appeared for Ireland in that one-day series in Southampton. So they're moving him up to 3. We're going to have the old firm of Balbirnie and Sterling opening. More an indication of a lack of alternatives than anything else. They've tried Andy McBride there. And of course they rested Josh Little for the test match back in June. He's the one possible star performer.
Played in the IPL final.
I mean, he's won the 100. Sterling's won the 100 a couple of times. So I think the fact now that Ireland players are regarded as overseas players in terms of county cricket has been a big hit to Irish cricket. When you think back to, without wishing to go over old sores, Jimmy, but Bangalore 2011, that squad, there was a lot of county cricket experience there.
What happened in that game? I can't remember anything about it
either. I don't know if it's still Cricket Ireland's Wi-Fi passcode, but for years it was Bangalore 2011. I suspect it might still be. You've Josh Little trying to obviously make a few quid around the world. They're going to have to be pragmatic about availability. It's a very busy 2024 coming up, but of course you'd rather, if you're an Irish cricket fan, come off the back of a World Cup campaign in India.
Yeah, I mean, actually Harry Tector has played as an overseas player for Gloucestershire this season in both Championship and
a possible Irish captain in waiting. Tector, an impressive figure when he gets going.
Yeah, he's 23 years of age. He's played 38 matches for Ireland. Jimmy, let's just focus again on England for a moment. Zach Crawley, so you played with him in the Ashes all summer. He said he was surprised. We're going to hear from him in just a moment, but he said he was surprised when he got the call to captain. What do you sort of make of him as a potential captain? He hasn't done a great deal of it, but he has done some for Kent.
Yeah, I think it's a great selection, really. I think for him, he's someone who's grown over the last couple of years. He obviously had his struggles in Test cricket, but I think the faith showed in him in the Test team has done him the world of good. And I feel like he's someone that maybe at the start of his Test career just got in his own head a little bit, started thinking about things a little bit too much, and then the minute the coaches and the players around him try to find ways of taking that pressure away from him and just letting him be free when he gets out into the middle, I think really helped his batting. And I think in a similar way, this will, being captain will actually take the pressure off his batting as well, because he's obviously going to have to think about other things, the tactics on the field and things like that, bowling changes and whatever it might be. and I just think that'll really help his game. And he's someone. The Ashes he had was just outstanding, and it repaid that faith that Stokes and McCullum showed in him over the last couple of years. And I think he'll do a fantastic job.
Yeah, it must have been so difficult for him, because he did a long period where just watching him looked good, nicked off, and to keep coming back from that, and eventually succeed. It says quite a lot about him.
Yeah, definitely. I think as players we could see that when we were you bowling him in the nets, you'd see him in matches, as you say, get off to good starts, and then not necessarily go on and make that big score, but you kind of knew it was always there. It was always in him to go on and make those big scores. And for me, to do it against one of the best bowling attacks in the world in Australia was just an amazing effort from him, and great to watch as well. And I'm sure we'll see if we get any play in this series, we'll get to see some of that. But I also think he does think about the game a lot. I think he will have a good tactical awareness around the on-field stuff, and he's also a calm he's got a calm manner about him. I think in the dressing room that will really rub off on the players as well.
OK, well, let's hear from him. He's been speaking to our chief cricket writer, Stefan Shemmelt.
Zach Crawley, England captain. How does that sound?
Yeah, it sounds good. It's unexpected, but it sounds good, and I'm looking forward to it.
How did it come about? How did you find out that you were going to be leading England in these 3 games against Ireland?
I just found out on the phone from Motti on the phone, and he told me I was playing and I'll be captaining, and like I say, it was a nice surprise.
Reaction?
I said that's awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. Just a great opportunity.
You done much before at any level of the game?
Yeah, I captained for Kent a few times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and obviously captained in age group stuff leading up. But I've often been a young player in a lot of teams, so I haven't really had the chance of late. But no, I've always enjoyed it when I've done it.
What's your style?
I don't know. I like to play it by ear, but I like to think it's similar to my batting. Like look to be positive and react from there. But we'll see how it goes.
Obviously, you've been trying to establish yourself in the white ball team as a batter, really, not just as a leader. But is it nice to be thought of by the management group as someone who could be a leader?
It's nice to be thought of as that. It's never been on my mind. It's always been about my batting and helping the team in any way I can. But it's nice to be thought of in that way. And if it comes my way in the future, then like I say, it's always a great honour. But yeah, it's never really been on my mind, to be honest.
And on that, is this week about you not just showing what you can do as a leader, but also what you can do as a batter? Because as we know, breaking into that first choice England white ball team is incredibly tough.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a very hard team to get into, and you got to bat really well to get into it, and that's obviously on my mind. And I think the best way to be a good leader as well is to lead from the front. And I think if I can get runs and field well, I think that'll help my captaincy a lot. So that's definitely on my mind, very much so.
There's a lot of other players in the England squad as well, thinking about how they can break into that white ball team. There's some uncapped players. What do you want the team and the individuals to get out of the next week?
I think it's just to show everyone how they can play it. I mean, it's to be aggressive. We all know how this England white ball team's played over the last 8 years. I think as a side, we know how you got to get into the main team, and that's by being aggressive and showing people what skill and quality you have. And I think that's what I think we should all try and do this week.
Because there's also, we know that the World Cup squad's been named, but Luke Wright was telling us yesterday that maybe there might be some reserve spots knocking around. Some guys will be wanting to put their hand up potentially for that, won't they?
Of course, you always want to put your hand up to be selected for England, but it's kind of out of your hand, all that selection stuff. The only thing that's in your hand is to perform when you get the opportunity to perform, and that's all you can do, and that's all everyone tries to do.
What are you expecting from Ireland? It's going to be maybe slightly unusual from when England play Ireland, in that the Irish team's probably going to be more experienced when it comes to one-day international cricket.
That's the thing, yeah, they've got experience. They know how they play the game, they know how they want to get a result in the game, so you're competing with that, and that they're good players, they're talented players all the way through, and we're going to have to play well to beat them.
But having Joe Root around, it's nice to have him in the dressing room.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love spending time with Rooty anyway, but to have him in the side as a batsman and as a former captain is going to be tremendously useful for me and the team.
Shows, doesn't it, a player of his stature to some of the younger lads, that even when he's not quite getting that rhythm, that he still wants to be around, he wants to have another knock. It shows what you've got to do to succeed at the highest level.
Well, yeah, no one works harder than Joe, and that's why he's the best. and we all try and emulate him as much as we can, but you can't quite. So it's like you say, it's great. He's a great person to learn from, and a role model to us all.
Lean on him a little bit from a leadership point of view.
Definitely, and I've always learnt on him about my batting and chat to him at slip. Obviously, I stand next to him in the field, so we get on well. And I definitely lean on him. And he's a great cricket brain and an experienced guy.
Will you insist on him calling you skipper? Will you put him in his place?
Well, he insisted on me calling him skipper, so yeah, absolutely. No, I'm joking. No, he's just Joe, and hopefully I'm just Zach.
And just finally, you're going to be captain. There's going to be a lot of things that you're in charge of. You won't be able to control the weather. Just got to watch that, haven't we, over the next week or so? Yeah,
hopefully it stays clear. You can't control it. We'll let the weather gods do their thing, and when we get a chance to play, we'll put our best foot forward.
Cheers, Zach. Good luck.
Thank you.
There we go. That is Zach Crawley. Well, England captain. Well, he's not England captain yet in one way because he hasn't led England onto the field, and he will hope to do so in the next 3 one-day internationals. He might not be able to do so today. It's not. I'm sure it's even raining at the moment, but there's a sort of drizzle in the air, and it is overcast. We're hoping that the weather improves this afternoon, and that we do get a chance for some play. Another game on Saturday in Nottingham at Trent Bridge, and that is an 11 o'clock start. And then Bristol next week on Tuesday, 12:30 start. I did have a look at the forecast for both those games, and at the moment the forecast is not too bad for Nottingham and for Bristol, although I did read that Hurricane Nigel's on his way in. There's some great names, aren't there, for the storms.
We're only making plans for Nigel, yeah.
We approach the UK. Zoltz, Andy Zoltzman's alongside me as well. Zach Crawley there said, I've done it 5 or 6 times for Kent. You're a man for the precise stat.
Well, I don't know if he's including friendly games or pre-season warm-ups, but in official matches he's done it 4 times, 2 T20 matches and 2 first-class matches in the county championship. All of those were in 2021. 3 wins, 1 defeat. So that's, if he can maintain that over the long international career, he'd be pretty pleased with that. So I'm not sure we can draw too many inferences from that. Didn't get a lot of runs in any of those games, but pretty small sample size.
Yeah, and just having a look at this England squad, who has played what when? I mean, how experienced is it? We were discussing in the interview there that the Ireland squad is more experienced in terms of one-day internationals. Who is potentially going to make their debut in the next week? And who has played the most and who has played a little bit? That's perhaps surprising. Someone like Ben Duckett, for example, has he played a lot? Has he played a little?
Well, if you're talking about just purely one-day internationals, it's a very inexperienced squad. Until they added Joe Root to it, it was set to be essentially the least experienced one-day international squad England had since the 70s. And one-day internationals were new. There are 4 players who've never played for England in this format. Sam Hain, a Warwickshire batter who's got a tremendous record in domestic 50-over cricket, averages 57 in 61 innings with 10 centuries. Tom Hartley, spinner from Lancashire, has played very little, only played 3 games of List A cricket and taken 1 wicket. George Scrimshaw has played 5 games, and Jamie Smith, British batting talent from Surrey, only 15. So there's something that we see with over recent years, that players just don't play 50-over cricket. If they're involved in the 100, then that clashes with the little pocket of the season which the authorities have dumped 50-over cricket into. And it is one of the curiosities that after that huge success of the 2019 World Cup, when the format sort of captured the imagination, it's just been taken to a barn and humanely destroyed. So there's a very inexperienced side, which I guess gives this series a bit of intrigue. Aside from, then the most experienced is Phil Salt, 14 one-day international caps. Bryden Carse has 10. He played in the last game against New Zealand. Rian Ahmed 1, Zach Crawley 3, played against Pakistan in that series in 2021 when England had to call up a complete new squad due to a COVID outbreak, and got a good 50 in one of those games. England had a superb 3-0 win over basically full strength Pakistan with that shadow side. Duckett's played 6 games, Will Jacks 2, Matthew Potts 1, that very hot game in Chester Street against South Africa. When the
Rassie van der Dussen made that brilliant 100.
And I think Potts went off due to the heat problems. Yeah. So that was his one international. Luke Wood, who himself has only played, he's 28 and has played a huge amount of T20 cricket, but only played 5 list A one-day matches, one of which was an ODI for England last year. So yeah, it's an intriguing and curious squad that shows a lot about where this format is now and how it's been treated.
Yeah, I mean, people listening to us will know the names, of course, because you'll be cricket devotees, and you'll know your championship cricket and your county cricket. Jimmy, Scrimshaw and Hartley, how much do you will know a bit about Hartley, won't you, as a fellow Lancashire player? What about Scrimshaw and Hartley and Scrimshaw?
Yeah, well, Tom Hartley I played a fair bit with at Lancashire, both mainly red ball. I obviously watched a lot of him in T20 and the 100 as well. And he's someone who I think at the minute when the conditions are in his favour, he's exceptional with the ball. He can spin it. He can read the play very well, so he can see a batter come in. He can and sort of change his delivery accordingly. He's got a really good sort of way of doing that. And I think,
is he a white ball cricketer or a red ball cricketer or both? Do you think for the future?
I think both. He's done. He played most of the early season when I played in the Championship. He played most of those games batting at 8, and obviously early season maybe didn't bowl as much as you would expect a spinner not to bowl too much in the early doors, April and May in England. But he played a pivotal role at batting at number 8 and actually smacked it. And he'd done a lot of work on his batting, so I think he's got the ability to clear the ropes towards the back end of an innings as well, which makes him a valuable member of any team. And I think, as I said, if the conditions are in his favour, definitely he's a threat. And I think just where he needs to work on, he's still young, still working on his game. I think where he needs to work on is when the conditions maybe aren't in his favour, just getting those variations and subtle little tweaks in his game to be able to cope with any.
So he wouldn't necessarily be a bolter for India then in the new year.
Well, potentially, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. Don't see why not. He's, as I said, if the conditions do suit him, if it spins, he bowls quick into the surface. He's tall. That's can be a real handful if you get the right surface in India. So I wouldn't rule him out of that, definitely. Then Scrimshaw, I've just seen a little bit on TV in the T20 Blast and in the 100. Really, I've not seen a huge amount, but obviously he's got something. He's got a bit of pace, and the selectors must like him to throw him into this squad because there's a lot of good pace bowlers out there at the minute. So all I've heard about him as well is good things, like players saying he's got something. So I'm looking forward to seeing him. Yeah,
it's good actually. The selectors they seem to have a much more, I was going to say left field, but a sort of much wider view of selection now. If someone's got some talent, in the old days, you always feel, he's got to play 5 years of county cricket before he can play for England. But now it's like, no, we see some talent in this guy. Let's elevate him.
Yeah, well, I think that's something that's been missing from the selection policy for a number of years, has been actually looking at the person, looking at the character of the player, rather than just backing it with numbers. Actually, if someone's got a little bit of talent, then and not just talent, but also that the character to be able to deal with international cricket and the pressure that comes with that. I think that's just as big a part of having that experience behind you, sort of thing. I think sometimes it's even better not to have experience and get thrown into international cricket because you're just going to enjoy it and take it for what it is, rather than feel like there's pressure on you to get runs and wickets. So I feel like I look down that list in the squad, and I think there's a huge amount of talent there. Yes, there's not a huge amount of games, especially in 50 over cricket, but I love what I see, and I can't wait to see some of these guys in action.
Yeah, you got Zach Crawley and Ben Duckett, who batted so well in the Ashes series. We don't actually know whether they are both going to open, or obviously we don't know whether Duckett's going to play necessarily, because there are other options at the top of the order, not least Phil Sawton, possibly Will Jacks as well. Going back to the Ireland squad, 8 players who played in that Test match earlier this year are in the squad. So it is that
we've hundreds of caps.
Yeah, you got hundreds.
Of
have you worked out how many caps Ireland have got? Zoltz, or have I thrown you a different
I can add it up for you,
Yeah.
Simon.
But it's
I mean, you're
loads.
talking about Paul Sterling's going to be playing.
154, isn't it?
Yeah, and Balbirnie's playing 101. So, in terms of the experience, there's no issue for Ireland. But it's just all their moving parts have to work, and pretty much work to 99% capacity over the next 3 matches. They've got to hold their catches. They've got to be big runs from the top of the order. There you go, 754.
754 caps.
There you are. And somebody's got to come up with a match-winning haul. We look back and we keep harking back. We're always harking back. But that wonderful run chase in Southampton, 329. It is possible. But just recently, Ireland have been scrambling. Campher has normally been scrambling in the middle order to hold it together after a collapse. So they're hoping he's going to move up to 3 and be the rock at the heart of a big innings. But it's a huge ask. And Paul Sterling can get you a match-winning big ton, but he can also give you a chance early on. He can play loose shots early on. We've seen that plenty in the past. So you're hoping that over the next 3 matches, we get to play to a conclusion every time, and that Ireland turn up and at least do themselves justice.
Do they expect to qualify in that?
I think they
in that
did.
the World Cup qualify, because the Netherlands, they would have looked enviously, or they will be looking enviously on the Netherlands, weren't they? You're going to compete in the World Cup. You think, wow, are we better than them? Should we have qualified in their place?
A lot of the other countries have moved on. Maybe Ireland have stood still or not moved on from 10, 15 years ago. I suppose you make the point for Ireland fans. I mean, Ireland at the minute are seeing an awful lot of Afghanistan and Bangladesh, etc. But for Ireland fans, regardless of the makeup of the England team, Ireland playing England is a big series. So there will be more attention on this series, I think, amongst Ireland cricket fans than maybe some of the more bread and butter series that we have coming up.
Just in terms of the world rankings in ODI cricket at the moment, Ireland are currently 13th. The Netherlands, who've qualified for the World Cup, 14th. Scotland 12th. Zimbabwe 11th. And the West Indies, who were knocked out in that qualifying tournament, 10th. So it's something that we saw when the World Cup was reduced from 14 teams, as it had been in 2011 and 2015, down to 10 teams for the last World Cup and this one. It's made it a lot harder for those.
There's a mad scramble amongst all those, and on any one day, one side can beat the other, and you're just hoping that this is your day or series of days.
Yeah, so 2 World Cups in a row, Scotland have been agonisingly small margins away from qualifying. There was a dodgy LBW and they played West Indies in 2019, and then a dramatic end when a late flurry of runs got the Netherlands over the line this time. So it's very hard to qualify. I think the next World Cup in 27 is due to go back up to 14.
Yeah, well, that's going to change and open it up again, isn't it, for the likes of Ireland?
Absolutely, and it feels like a topic we've been talking about for about a decade and a half, and it almost is a sort of oh dear, there's the rain.
Yeah, it's raining quite hard again now. I
thought it had got a bit brighter, but it's gone grey and dark again, and the rain has started. Yeah, it certainly will open things up, and but it feels like a common sort of complaint from Irish cricketing voices that the door is being slammed, and then when FIFA in the footballing world is opening up the World Cup, and the European Championship's going to basically eventually contain every team playing European football, and if you're not there, you've done something badly wrong. So yes, back up to 14 is a good thing for Irish cricket.
Yeah, and those who might not have noticed it, the next T20 World Cup is in West Indies. It's in the middle of our summer next year in June, which will be an odd thing actually to have all the players going away from the UK in the middle of the summer. It's 20 teams, so 4 groups of 5, and then they're on to a Super 8 after that, and Ireland have qualified for that. There was a qualifying tournament in Scotland very recently. Who remind us who Ireland and Scotland were up against, because they've both qualified.
They did get through. Go on, Zoltz, you've got the stats there. But a more, you would say, more conducive to Irish teams and Irish conditions. And in terms of the T20 side, if you're not going to make a 20-team World Cup, you've done something wrong.
Yeah, they really had to make that, didn't they? If you're not going to get through to that, you've got some problems.
Without a doubt, and we look at the red ball. Ireland play so little red ball cricket, and I think the lack of county experience has shown, certainly in terms of the test match against England. They're not as strong as a red ball side as back in 2019 when they, let's remember, won 2 out of 3 days at Lord's, you know.
What was the end result?
I can't remember.
Right, okay. What? Just on. Sorry, Dogs, you got that?
Yeah, the recent qualifier in July of this year, Scotland finished top. Ireland was second. And they saw off the challenge of Italy, Jersey, Germany, Denmark, and Austria.
All the big guns. Yeah, that's right.
Yes, it's regionalised. Some teams haven't qualified yet. There are still some qualifying places on offer for that World Cup in the West Indies.
And I don't know if we know what the format for this, the 14-team World Cup in 2027, the 50-over World Cup, is going to be. Whether they're going to go back to the 2 groups of 7 that was very poorly conceived and led to not particularly thrilling group stages, or try something a little more inventive.
Yeah, there's got to be some jeopardy in the group stage. I mean, there's no doubt, I think, in the World Cup that's coming up in India, there is jeopardy in the group stage as the rain actually
getting very heavy now.
Starts to lash down, doesn't it? Yeah, I mean, this is not good news. It's already pretty wet out there.
That's right. Balbirnie said in the sort of build-up of the test in June that possibly one of Ireland's biggest games was going to be against Italy in Edinburgh. You know, slightly for comic effect, but I suppose it wasn't. He wasn't telling a lie. And the fact that they did manage to get through. Dear God, this is like a summer's day in Donegal here now, Simon.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people who were, and I think possibly some school children.
Oh dear, they're taking cover.
They were sitting in the stands, but now they've had to beat a hasty retreat underneath the stand away to our right-hand side on the western end, because it is lashing down suddenly at Headingley. I mean, I did see, the forecast today was for showers and sort of and drizzle and things like that, but this is pretty heavy rain, this.
Yeah, well, the ground staff were actually they'd taken the sandbags that were holding the covers down, they took them off, but they were doing it at quite a leisurely pace as if they knew what was coming, and then they've just all strolled off the ground. It looks pretty miserable now.
Yeah, it does feel like an odds against sort of day that Headingley today, getting some cricket. Just a reminder that we need to be playing by 5:32, which is still a long way away. And we did see on that Saturday of the Ashes Test match here that I think everyone was pretty gloomy about the possibility of play, but we got underway at 5 o'clock and England took some vital wickets, and that was instrumental in them going on to win that Test match. So things, English grounds, drainage is much better, but one of the problems of playing, I suppose, at this time of the year, 20th of September today, is there anything to help the drying process, like a bit of sun or a strong breeze? At the moment, nothing's going to dry because it's belting down out there. So it's a very rather gloomy prospect in Headingley. Around about, I've seen various estimates, between 10,000, 14,000 tickets sold. Well, I think people have taken a view about not coming to the ground just yet, and that's a sensible view, because they're nowhere near that number of people in the ground. I can see some people huddled in the stand at the far end, the Howard stand. Some of the hospitality areas they're just sort of looking out, perhaps rather gloomily at the moment, at the little prospect of play for the next few hours. We'll see whether we can get some cricket in.
Latest here is that there's a nasty last little burst of rain that is rumbling over at the moment. Should be clear in about 20 minutes or so. It's not heavy, and it's certainly not the sort of deluge we saw earlier, but it is enough to see the covers back on and the ground staff retreating in the main away from their duties of trying to tidy things up. We know that we have to be started by 5:32. We're going to have another pitch inspection in about 50 minutes from now. I suppose we could be in a situation there, they might say it's going to take 2 hours to clear up, and it could get a little bit tricky at that stage. We don't have any evidence for that, but we're just sort of trying to give a little bit of a sense for you, but we will see.
We're here at Headingley. We're waiting for play to start. Well, we're not sure it's going to start. There's another inspection at 5:15. People are just getting a little bit irritated in the crowd. There was some boos when they announced there was going to be another inspection at 5:15. The problem is there are some damp patches. There are always damp patches, aren't there? That's the problem with cricket, and we have had no play today in this one-day international, which between England and Ireland. Gareth Cooper on Twitter, they've done no work on it, that's the ground, for the last 10 minutes. So why not do the inspection now? Nothing's going to change if they are doing no work on it. 5-hour drive from Scotland for my son's birthday to sit and watch quite literally nothing. Yeah, and I think that sums up the frustration inevitably for the spectators, and there isn't a great deal of information out there. It hasn't rained for, I don't know, about 2.5, 3 hours, possibly even longer than that, but there has been a lot of rain in Leeds in the last few days, and the ground at this time of the year hasn't been able to cope with it. Ebony Rainford Brent, who's presenting the highlights tonight. You might not have a show.
I don't know if there's a show going.
Is alongside
at the moment
me.
It's all the supersopper.com, but
yeah,
we'll see.
We've seen a couple of the Irish squad members out there doing a bit of sort of juggling with a football, and then they seem to have gone back inside. A couple of them now talking to one of the umpires. We're waiting for the umpires.
They thought they were playing. They would have been out there right now, wouldn't they? Do you think?
We've got to be playing by 5:32. So when the inspection takes place at 4:45, they're going to have to make a decision one way or the other, because you're going to have a toss, aren't you?
But if you thought you were playing, you'd be out there now going through your stretches and whatnot.
Yeah, before we heard that interview with Tim Wigmore and Matt Roller with Jonathan Agnew, Henry et al. were making the point about the communication to the crowd about the situation, and it is very frustrating. It is probably the worst thing about cricket, isn't it? Weather.
Could we bring back the bowl outs? I was showing you the other day. I think you could get a bowl out on one strip.
You like those bowl outs, don't you? That's where basically they used to settle sort of knockout ties in the old days, Benson Hedges Cups and Gillette Cup matches when they had 3 days of rain. I think they used to give it 3 days in those days. They were, for big matches, semi-finals and things. So you have 3 days of rain. Of course, the drainage wasn't quite as good then as it is now, even though it's not working today. And so you'd have 5 deliveries at the stumps.
Yeah.
It's amazing how...
See the fast bowler just kind of like lobbing up a kind of off spinner that misses the stumps by miles. It's fun.
Yeah, people are bowl bouncers.
A bit like your bowling. It's,
well, I think the slower you are, Ebbs,
I remember,
and the shorter your run, it's probably the easier it is to hit the stumps, isn't it?
Well, that's the theory, but this is why it's so good to watch, because on paper you see people slowing it down and then missing by miles. It's brilliant. Shall we bring it back? Then today, it's possible we could have had a bowl out today. Not a whole game running around and possibly on damp outfits, but you could have a nice strip.
It's pretty thin pickings for the crowd, though, isn't it? Like a 10-minute bowl out to settle a non-existent one-day international.
Yeah.
Well...
You'd watch it, though, wouldn't you?
I quite like the suggestion that if there's a damp patch from one end, why don't we just bowl from the other end and just have the whole match being delivered from one end?
Fair, that does make a lot of sense.
Well, it does in a way, doesn't it? On extreme days like this, I suppose it sort of, in a way, it tears asunder its civilization, doesn't it? Cricket's never been
bowled
like
from one
that.
end.
You don't play cricket like that, but there is a sort of a certain logic to doing that. Because we are in the entertainment business, aren't we, really? And players want to play, although what they don't want to do, of course, and Jimmy was articulating that point just now, that they don't want to get injured, and if there is a problem with the run-up, you don't want to pull a calf. Full stop, you don't want to get injured. There are contracts available, money to be made, and also, for some of these players, there's a potential place as a backup player on England's World Cup squad. If someone gets injured in the World Cup, you might be in the World Cup. Oh, sorry, I'm injured. I pulled a calf muscle bowling in the one-day international on the 20th of September when it was too wet out there to realistically bowl. It's one of the frustrating things about cricket, that when it rains, it does affect the ground, and you have to have a reasonably firm ground.
Indoor bowl out. You're not buying it.
Well, they've done that as well. No, they've done that as well. There have been times when it has been too wet to have a bowl out in the middle, and they've taken it to indoor schools, which causes logistical problems if the game, say, was
put it on
covered
the big screens.
Television. Yeah, you have to take get all the. I expect they can do it these days, all the camera work inside, and you have to be able to film it well, don't you? I mean, I think in the old days it's probably harder to do. These days it's probably
bowling
more
machine.
Straightforward.
So out in the middle, because the square is. But you think about it, if you put a bowling machine at one end and just said, right, everyone gets 10 balls, how many sixes? That would actually be fun. Yeah. You know that the strip's going to be solid.
Yeah.
You're not buying this, are you?
No, I think it's a little bit. It's a knockout. That's the only thing. For those who remember, It's a Knockout programme. It was sort of.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just thinking of ways to keep the crowd entertained.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Though, and it is desperately frustrating. I suppose you do.
What other sport would be this effect? Because golf still plays, rugby plays.
Well, golf is sometimes called off in the rain, isn't it? If the greens are saturated, if there's thunder and lightning.
When it was
around.
chucking it down during the Ashes, the whatever major was going on was still playing.
Yeah,
they play more.
Golf would play more. And the only other sport. Well, there probably are other sports that are weather affected. You think of something like tennis.
Tennis, yeah.
Which is when it's played outdoors. A lot of tennis is played indoors, and it does lead to the question, about indoor cricket stadiums. I mean, long after we've all gone, they probably will be playing cricket indoors in various parts of the world. I mean, we'll go to India for the World Cup. We might not see a drop of rain, might we, for 2 months?
Yeah.
Let's hope so. Anyway, around. But so some climates are just far more conducive to cricket. How did we ever start cricket in this country?
I don't know.
How did it happen?
We started a lot. We started the game. We started T20.
Yeah. I just imagine, in the 1780s, they managed to play between the 1st of June and about the 30th of July, and that was it. Right, the umpires are on their way with their inspection, and we'll, I'm sure that we will know one way or the other. But how much has it dried in the last 3/4 of an hour? We think that the absolute best is going to be a 20-over game.
At 5:32.
Yeah, and at absolute best. There's a lot of sort of feet going into turf by the stumps where those bowlers run-ups are very wet. I mean, it does make you wonder why they are so wet, because
they were covered.
Well, you can cover them, can't you?
They were covered.
But
I guess maybe
it's got underneath. I don't know whether the water table's high. But
you've been in the subcontinent when the full sheet gets pulled across.
Yeah, well,
the whole ground.
in Sri Lanka, the whole ground is covered, and possibly even Bangladesh as well.
Yeah, Bangladesh. I've been there where they pulled the whole thing over.
Yeah, and they have got about 100 people to do it.
Doing it, yeah.
And it obviously it does work. And they had torrential rain there at times, so it's really effective. They can get those big sheets on very quickly. What they don't tend to have in those countries, those sorts of central hover covers that we have here. They just out come the sheets all over the ground.
That doesn't look good. I've just seen the umpire's foot go in a hole. I guess the issue here is where it is, isn't it? There's certain, in the run-up, in those sort of key areas in and around the square, they want to make sure that is dry.
Yeah, well, they are out there. The umpires today out there are Adrian Holdstock and Mike Burns are the two umpires out there at the moment. Yeah, but it's not easy for them because they understand the issues with the crowd. But they've also got to be fair to the players as well. Some of the bowlers particularly, they're going to be running in through those damp areas. It's not an easy one for them. They're having a chat now. Well, we're trying to read their body language.
There's no mat. We don't use matting really here, do we? Played on it in the Netherlands, and is it coconut matting? Sometimes you can put over a few strips that just cover some of those key areas.
Yeah, but they would be some.
Then you can get caught.
Odd areas, you get
caught
feet caught in them. Well, you can hear the slow hand clap. It's not a huge crowd here at Headingley today. It has built up considerably with the weather drying out. So at the moment, I'd say it's probably, an eighth full, something like that. And I dare say that if they do decide to play and we get a 20-over game, then people who've got tickets today, we understand there's over 10,000 with tickets that they might come along. But it's fairly obvious that people sort of took a view this morning. OK, if we don't get any play, I'll get a refund. But if we do get news of play, we'll pop along.
I heard 14,000 was sold.
Yeah, I heard 10 or 14. I don't know how you can have such a disparity, but
it's happening. Here's the conversation. Groundsman's in. I feel like they've made a decision. Is the match manager tapping? Get on WhatsApp.
Not yet.
The body language is not screaming imminent elite sport.
Match manager's in the middle. Umpire, groundsman.
Michael McNamee is here as well.
It's like a Malahide day, isn't it, Simon?
It does, yeah.
We've had a few of these.
Had a few of these, yeah.
Through the years, mainly in Ireland.
I remember the one day we were there when a game was called off in Malahide. That was the day Peter Moores was removed as England coach. I thought that story overtook the game completely.
Oh, it's been frustrating and maddening, hasn't it? I know there are a handful or a few Irish fans have travelled.
Would there be many who have made the journey?
Not as many, Ebony, as when the schools were off. I think
Of
the schools
course,
going
yeah.
back has ruled out the parents and sons and daughters possibilities of coming over for one or more of the matches. So we're all just waiting for the thumbs up or the thumbs down, aren't we?
Yeah, the umpires have gone off the ground now, so they must have made a decision because we've got to start.
Maybe they're leaping in a fast car and speeding away.
Make their decision on WhatsApp when they're through past Headingley.
Or could come back out with the hairdryers and go, right, this is the spot. Give us 10 minutes. What about those leaf blowers? They look like they would do something. The big long leaf blowers. Put a bit of heat in that.
I like the way you're thinking, Ebony. You need some creativity, don't you, to dry the ground out. I remember a day in Guwahati where they brought the helicopter over to try to dry the ground, and they knew it was effective as a PR stunt because they knew they were never going to play because it was so wet. And there was a bit of a
photo opportunity.
There was a riot after that game was called because it was the big match. It was the one game of the year being played in Guwahati, England against India. Two big teams in town. I remember when we arrived in the press in our press bus. There was a big crowd to meet us. That's how exciting it was. The Guwahati's big match. Now there's a bit more cricket there. And actually, there's some World Cup warm-up games, some IPL games being played there now. So, but back in the day, that was a big occasion, and the ground was saturated. And there was no chance of them ever playing. But it was dry. That was the point. It was dry throughout the day, and the crowd just couldn't understand why there was no cricket.
But they just hovered the helicopter.
The helicopter was over, and it just the idea was try to create some movement and dry the ground out. Anyway, it didn't work, and then there was a riot, and people ran on, and there were rocks being thrown.
You got involved.
Well, inadvertently, in the sense that the rocks were coming over towards the press area. Stones, and the crowd just so unhappy that there was no cricket. Anyway, happy times.
Yeah.
In Guwahati. I've seen one or two crowd disturbances in India. Of course, that World Cup semi-final in 1996, where they started fires in the ground, and the match was abandoned. India against Sri Lanka. India were losing the game by a long way. Clive Lloyd took the decision no, and I think they went back once and it started again. They said no, that's it. The players are coming off, and awarded the match to Sri Lanka. Right, what have we got?
News.
The match has been abandoned. Okay. Not entirely surprising. I don't think it's been communicated to the crowd yet. If people are listening on their earpieces to Test Match Special, when that news will have got through. I'm afraid, everybody, the game has been abandoned. But it's still up on the big screen. I'm waiting for there we go. It's up there now.
No.
Match abandoned. Well, not many boos. I've just seen people just stand up, pack their
air of resignation
away and move away.
Yeah, that's. I feel for if you've been in the crowd, you've been waiting. Maybe this is one of the few tickets you thought, I'll get one towards the end of the season. Get that.
Some boos now, as people's attention's been drawn to the big screen. It's a frustrating one, obviously, really difficult. You'll get your money back, but it doesn't compensate. Who was the chap that was on Twitter saying, his 5-hour drive from Scotland on his son's birthday? It's
and also the fact that the last hour has been the driest and sunniest period of the day.
Yeah, so it feels off, doesn't it? Yeah, that's disappointing. Look, I think for everyone, I think this would have been quite I think this series is going to have some good cricket to it, with the two sides shaping up, and it would have been good to just sort of finish with a bang. Look, 2 games to come, but for the crowd, they would have been hoping for a real entertainer today.